What it is, good people? We're here for another episode of the Literary Dummies web show starring me, Alex. You can follow me on Twitter at fudge_bars B capital Z. On Instagram at fudge_bars capital B capital Z, and my co-host
Kevin. You can follow me on Instagram at Scotty Get Down with 2 N's and the letter 1. No Twitter.
This time we're gonna discuss the classic horror, I think sci-fi is considered,
I guess.
Frankenstein, written by Mary Shelley. She actually originally published this when she was 18, but it wasn't published under her name. It was anonymous, and then it got published with her name at 20. The inspiration from Frankenstein comes from Frankenstein's castle in Germany, where an alchemist 200 years before Frankenstein, like before this book, was doing wild experiments. It's considered to be the first science fiction story by some. It's a frame story, and I had no idea what a frame story was. And once I found out what a frame story was, it made the story make more sense. But a frame story is basically like Inception on the low. It's a story within a story, and typically you go back to the first story that was started. So we're going to get into the plot before we get into the discussion. It starts, the first story is letters being sent from a sailor, Captain Robert Walton, who's exploring the North Pole. He's sending letters to Sister Margaret. He's a failed writer, but now he's trying to get his fame through exploration and science and stuff. He ends up finding the frozen body of Victor Frankenstein, the doctor. Despite what people think, the monster is called the monster. Frankenstein is the doctor. Victor Frankenstein. He finds him frozen in the North Pole, and Victor sees some similarities with what Robert is going through. He sees some similarities in himself, so he starts telling him his story as a warning to the captain. He starts at childhood. He basically raised by a family with some money, and everybody's into science, specifically chemistry. Victor, like that, at 5, they adopt an orphan girl named Elizabeth, and the plan was for them to like grow up and get married, and Victor does fall in love with her. It's weird, white people shit. You can't be adopting kids and then be like, we going.
Yeah.
Y'all was wild. They was wilding back in the day. Y'all was wilding in Europe, yo. Victor's mom dies before he goes to college, so like all his grief gets channeled into his scientific work. He's super fired with the science game. There's like this whole conversation going on that I just thought was real cool, where they say science is nature's philosophy, or like that's what they call chemistry, and I just thought that was
Yeah, science and alchemy. Well, he was talking to his mentor. And
yeah, he's talking to his mentor in the beginning, and he's saying like they just call science like nature's philosophy, and I thought that was a dope definition of science. He ends up finding a way to put life into non-living things. He does it to a man, but none of the parts are right, so the man ends up way taller and bigger and buff as shit. And ugly. The intention was not to make the monster ugly. He was trying to make the monster beautiful, but like you can still see blood vessels and muscle and stuff and veins and everything. So when the monster first awakes, Victor's just disgusted, and he break out. While running away, he runs into his best friend Clerval. I just thought that was a fire name. Clerval.
Henry Clerval.
So Victor's telling him about the monster and takes him back to see the monster. The monster has since then escaped. Victor gets sick because he's guilty about creating this monster and not having him anymore, like just letting him get away. He finds out his brother gets killed, goes back home to see about his brother, and he sees like the monster at the scene, so he knows it's the monster. but the monster has framed his old nanny. So Victor goes into the mountains looking for the monster, and the monster actually finds him. And by this point, the monster has grown intelligent, and he starts telling his side of the story. So it's like a story within a story within a story. Inception. He tells him about his early days, and in his early days, the first group of humans he ran up on just beat him up. Because he was that ugly. That's really all it was. Yo, my man was ugly and couldn't talk. Yo, y'all just beat that nigga up. Yo, it's a real ugly nigga. I don't know, like, yo, people be ugly sometimes. You can't just beat niggas up because they ugly.
Well, I guess he had organs showing, all kind of bullshit.
I mean, I would have thought he needed some help. Like, yo, you can see his whole heart, yo.
I just ran.
But you would have chased after the rabbit in the tuxedo.
Because it's a rabbit.
It's a human that look like, see, this the shit I be
But you're talking about an 8-foot tall human thing that has veins and blood vessels and can't talk. That's not appealing to me. A rabbit with a suit on and glasses, that's normal.
That's not normal.
No, the rabbit is normal. But the suit and the glasses intrigue me. Nothing about a big tall monster intrigues me at all.
Alright, man. So he at some point he lived in an abandoned structure that was next to a cottage that some poor people lived in. And like he loved watching that poor family, not even on no creepy stuff. It was just like he wanted to go talk to them, but he couldn't. But he could tell like they were really happy, even though they didn't have a lot. They was always singing songs and taking care of the patriarchal figure in the family who was blind. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to have that. He wanted to have those feelings. He ended up teaching himself how to speak by listening to him so much. He taught himself to read after finding some old books. I don't really know.
I don't either. They didn't go into detail.
Yeah, he didn't really talk about it, but
just learn.
I understood him listening and figuring out how to talk, but I don't know how that translates to reading.
Yeah.
You don't know what a letter is, my nigga. And maybe it was like some letter books in there. That's just.
I think he was just naturally a genius creature.
Or he might have still had some human. We'll discuss that when we finish the plot. He after learning how to read, he ends up seeing himself in like a lake. Like he sees his reflection in a lake. And it's the first time he's seen himself, so now he knows he's ugly. That's so sad, yo. That's fucked up. Yo, she was hurting my nigga, yo. Come on, yo. The monster was cool, yo.
I put a hat on.
He tried to befriend the family, and it was working because the family wasn't there. Oh, he was leaving the family firewood because he big and strong, and he had firewood, or he knew how to make a fire, and he knew it was important. So without telling them, he would just leave them firewood. Like, I'm gonna take what I need and I'm gonna just bring y'all the rest. So eventually he tries to befriend the family one day when the dad is not, like, is there by himself, and the dad's blind, and he's trying to tell the dad, like, yo, I really, really like y'all, but because of how I look, when they come home, they're not gonna like me. And like the dad's telling him, like, no, I got you. And he's like, nah, you don't. Like the monster knows. He's like, yo, I'm shooting my shot, but I do not expect this bitch to go in. Mm-hmm. It's just nice to have this moment to talk to you, basically. Mm-hmm. So the family comes back home, and like 2 of them pass out, mm-hmm. and they end up just leaving the cottage. So he all depressed. So he goes back. Then we find out. That's when he goes back to Victor's initially to kill the little girl and frame the name. To kill William and frame the name. Mm-hmm. He gets back and he tells Victor, yo, I want a female companion because he feels like as a living being it's his right to love and happiness. And I mean, we have a whole constitution that, ain't that the American ideal? And this ain't even America. So
I don't know if he fell under that umbrella.
He said the right as a living being to be happy.
He's not really living, he's undead.
He came back to life. Nah, it was putting life back into something that wasn't living. So he was living.
Isn't that undead?
No, that's a zombie. He wasn't a zombie. He was reborn.
but he looked like one.
That ain't his fault.
Yeah, one could argue that.
Shut up, dude. He ends up telling Victor, like, if you don't make this woman for me, I'm just gonna kill everybody you love. Mm-hmm. He was like, and like he says it like, no, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm going to kill everyone you love and you care about until I get what I want. So Victor like agrees, but really is like, I'm not gonna do that shit. Mm-hmm. So Clerval and Victor ride out to England and end up separating in Scotland. They always want to split up, and it never works out. Victor thinks the creature's following him anyway. So when working on the female, he worries that either the creature, like the woman, will hate the creature because he's so ugly, or they'll both just breed and it'll be a lot of evil monsters running around. So he stops working. The creature's been following him this whole time and tells him like, yo, either do it or niggas is dying. We not trying to threaten nobody. And Victor's like, nah, y'all are threatening the whole humanity. So the creature's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna be with you on your wedding night. Because he knows all about like Victor having fallen in love with Elizabeth, and him. The plan was always for him to get married. So they about to get married. Victor shook. So Victor sails out to destroy all the work that he's done on the woman. Like he throws her in the water, throws all the work in the water. He lands in Ireland and he's arrested, and he finds out Clerval has been murdered. And he's arrested because they think it was him, but the creature obviously did it. He can't really tell nobody that because they're not going to believe him. Somehow he get off. He go back home, marry Elizabeth. The creature kills her, like the night of or the night after the wedding. Like Victor knows it's coming. Like he trying to have a strap ready and everything, but the monster make him think he outside, and then the monster not outside, and he strangle his wife. And then by the time Victor get back up there, Victor sees it from outside. He just points to like a different window, and she's dead. That was cool. That was like a fire way to rank that. Victor chases the creature into the North Pole and ends up, after that, Victor's dad dies because he's so hurt by Elizabeth being dead, because that's like his daughter. He was adopting kids to groom them for marriage. It's just crazy. So Victor chases the creature to the North Pole. He ends up collapsing from exhaustion and hypothermia. That's where, and then we pick up the story back with Captain Walton. He picks up after Victor's story, and he's more or less like, we've seen the creature pretty much. And the ship ends up getting stuck in some ice. And once it finally gets out of the ice, his whole crew is like, yo, let's just go down south. Like, we trying to do too much. And Victor's like, he tries to like give this riveting speech like, no, we exploring shit. Yo, let's go to the North Pole. And the captain is like, but nah, my crew not with that. And he goes on, Victor said, well, fuck it, then I'm going to the North Pole by myself. But Victor's weak at this point and ends up dying. His last words are, seek happiness and tranquility and avoid ambition. The creature actually mourns Victor's death. It doesn't bring him any peace. And he says everything, like pretty much is his fault. Because everybody he killed led to this. And then he just floats off into the abyss.
Well, he said he's going to kill himself.
Yeah, he said he's going to kill himself and then just floats off into the abyss.
I thought that was a very good book. It makes me want to read the ones that she didn't write, because the ones that she didn't write, I always thought that she wrote all of them, but I didn't know she only wrote that book. Because the ones in the future that other people wrote, Henry was Victor's brother, and Henry becomes Frankenstein when he dies, and Victor mourns his brother's loss. And then other iterations, this is his brother or somebody he knows and stuff like that.
I mean,
and then he calls himself Frankenstein after Victor
Frankenstein. You don't know about young Frankenstein. That shit was hilarious. The name is Frankenstein.
It was a good book.
It was cool. That letter shit was not hidden.
That first part of the book was bad, yeah.
When you gotta read the letters back and forth, it's not hidden.
I skipped a couple of them because it wasn't important anyway. Like he was writing to the captain was writing to his sister. Sister is not important to the story at all.
I was listening to the audio book.
Oh, that's probably worse.
Yeah, it was just like, who are these people even talking to?
And they're not talking about nothing.
And then it still wasn't even immediately great when it first got to Victor. He had some interesting conversations when he was in college and talking about alchemy, because the whole thing was, even back then, it was like, yo, you're talking about, you're great at chemistry, but you're studying stuff that don't even exist no more, that like we found out don't work. It's outdated, it's bullshit. Some of the scientists, like he was saying, some of his favorite scientists, like his professors, was like, nobody listens to them. That was interesting, but then that ran off because it was like, I don't really care about you and Elizabeth and all of that. But once he find that monster and you get his side of the story, that was interesting. One other thing I found cool is I didn't know that it's Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus.
Oh yeah.
That was dope. Just the whole religious aspect. Like, there's a part when the monster's talking early and he says, I was benevolent when I was first created. Like, I was good when I was first created. It wasn't until you just pretty much said, fuck me, that the evils of the world got to me. And if you read the Bible, it's like very adamant that everything God created in the first seven. Like, I'm not religious, but it's very adamant that like everything God created in the first 7 days was good. So it's like, yeah, it's meant to be good until somebody messes it up. And Victor messed it up and didn't realize, like in his, in his ambition, he didn't realize what he did. And he didn't realize he could make it up. Like, yo, the monster was giving him chances. He probably could have done more than just made him a woman had he took it back quicker. Like, he could have been like, all right, well, I'll take the time in introducing you to humanity.
Yeah.
So they don't flip out when they see you. But he just assumed because he was ugly off rip. It was a wretch. He just kept calling him a wretch.
Could have talked to him.
He didn't do nothing.
He just said, oh damn, shit, and left his own left his own lab. Was like, nah.
I'm out, yo.
Or he could have killed him.
Something.
Could have set him on fire, killed him, something like that. He did nothing. He just kind of was like, oh, you know.
Well, I mean, he did break out like right after Victor left.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like it was saying a lot about humanity to me. Just Victor was like a sociopath, and he had something he had control over, and when he had ultimate control, he didn't want it anymore. Yeah. And it messed up everything for a being that didn't want to be here. Like, I didn't ask you to do this.
Like I always found it weird, like not weird per se, but I always want. But this is the first book, but I always like to know more detail about the person that he brought back to life. Like whose brain is in there?
Yeah.
Whose body is it? Because I was that's what I was waiting for. I was like, okay, maybe he'll have some kind of memory or something like this, blah blah. But I didn't get it. So basically, it's a whole new.
Yeah, he does mention like understanding that he was someone else.
Yeah.
Before, but you don't get any, because I mean, there's so many different parts though. Even if you just wanted to go, okay, just go with his brain, people be like, but that's not all. You know how people is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was overall, I think it was a good book. And so once you get past that first part with the letters.
Once you get past them letters, it's definitely worth the read. And I think it's better than a lot of other Frankenstein stuff I've seen.
I actually wouldn't mind seeing that it was a movie, but I don't know.
Like more true to the story. Like I like the whole, I never knew that the monster becomes intelligent.
Yeah. And no Igor.
Yeah, no Igor. I was kind of hurt about that.
I thought she made Igor up, so that means some fool made up this hunchback Igor.
Yeah, I thought Igor was going to be. I actually thought Clairvaux was supposed to be Igor.
But he had no assistant, actually. He had no assistant.
Yeah, he just did it. And I mean, hey, it's a really good read once you get past them letters.
Mm-hmm. I fell asleep in them letters too.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5.
I do that. I give it 4.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We'll be back soon. P. You never know I'm ready.